A doctor who is vegetarian has turned fully carnivore and calls it undeniable. Are his 3 reasons really scientifically sound, or are they dangerously oversold? Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Westman, and welcome to my channel where I review and debunk nutritional misinformation online. Let's see what this doctor has to say.
I've tried basically every diet there is. I've been vegan, vegetarian, I've done the Atkins diet, the paleo diet, the Mediterranean diet, and the carnivore diet. And everything that I've tried, every nutrition plan, there is no doubt in my mind that carnivore is the healthiest, that carnivore is the absolute best.
Well, so let's just stop there. Always consider the source. And here we have a purportedly, looks like a young man who's tried all these different diets. Yes, he's a doctor, but still it's just one person's experience. And yet I've seen this experience over and over where people have tried other diets and then carnivore or keto, something very simple and as low carb, will work for them. So let's see what the reasons are that he says that it's undeniable.
I went to med school in the UK, and I can tell you that I had maybe 2 hours on nutrition when I went to med school. And if you speak to any doctor, dentist, anyone with a medical degree or dental degree, you'll find that we're not actually taught about nutrition. And I find that absolutely crazy, because how does it make sense that what you're putting into your body every single day doesn't have a massive impact on how you feel? I was doing what I thought was a well-balanced diet. So I had my fats, I've had my protein, my vegetables and carbs, but I could tell that I wasn't in peak condition. I had certain conditions like migraines. I was carrying extra weight, even though I exercise very regularly. I wasn't feeling my best. And that's what started my journey into trying to understand nutrition in further detail to find out what's the best thing.
Yeah, and I have to say that this is generally true, that doctors don't get information or teaching about nutrition, let alone weight loss and diabetes reversal. But the fact that doctors don't have the education can be a plus, actually, if they find their own experience like Dr. Rosh has, or if you have experience and go back to educate your doctor. If the doctor doesn't really have much education, you can teach them another way, perhaps. But if they got taught that there's only one way to do things, it's hard to teach a doctor. But that idea that it is not part of medical education, I agree with Dr. Rosh. It's crazy that it's not part of medical education.
And I came across carnivore. Now, there are 3 main categories that really helped me decide that carnivore was the right thing for me, but also, as it turns out, right for basically every human being in the world. And I know that's a really bold claim. So if you stay with me, I'll try and get you a little bit closer in your journey in understanding why that's the case. Now, the first thing that drew me to carnivore is obviously the anecdotal evidence. Now, we all have spoken to carnivores before, and they all claim crazy things, huge amounts of weight loss, muscle gain, better energy, better facial symmetry, no cavities, reversing degenerative diseases such as diabetes, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, even mental health conditions like depression and anxiety massively improve for these patients who go carnivore.
Well, let's hang on there. So he is citing lots of different levels of evidence here, and then making the wide generalization that it's the healthiest thing for everyone on the planet. Well, that would be hard to prove. So using anecdotal evidence can be a problem if it's not replicated in more than 1 or 2 people. And yet if you see thousands and thousands of anecdotes, at least you know it can work, but you still don't know the whole safety profile. But I'm just saying, now we're going beyond his experience, but to his view of the anecdotes and the science. And there's more science behind obesity and diabetes reversal than the other things that he's talking about.
So that piqued my interest. And I can honestly say, even though I've met a lot of vegans or vegetarians who've gone carnivore, I've never met a carnivore who's gone vegan, because the way you feel when you're carnivore, it's just, there's nothing like it.
Well, so then there's the kind of not great scientific way of describing what people do. I bet there are some carnivores who become vegan, but he just doesn't know any, right?
But I was vegetarian, and when I discovered that I wanted to move into the carnivore space, I didn't want to do it right away. If I just suddenly started eating lots of meat after not eating any meat whatsoever, then my body would be sent into overdrive. It'd be wondering where all of my vegetables and where my carbs are. Microbiome in my gut will become very confused, and it will start digesting its own inner lining rather than digesting the carbs that it's used to. So,
Well, I'm not sure if that's a scientifically proven concept, but I can see the rationale that you would want to do it slowly, but that's not the way I do it. I have people do it all at once because of the element of, for most people, addiction. And it's best if you get rid of all the carbs you're addicted to all at once. But apparently that wasn't his issue here. And the idea that everything has to do with the microbiome now is, I think, a little overplayed. And there's so many things we can do without any worry about the microbiome. But this is just the way he's thinking it through. A young doctor. Also, he came to the realization that the brainwashing that's occurring about vegetarianism saving the planet is not really based in science. And I found that to be true myself. I can't wait to see his video on that.
but ultimately what they found was that populations like the Maasai tribe, for example, tribe in Africa, they would only eat meat and dairy, but high quality meat and dairy, not stuff that's been heavily processed. They would rear the animals themselves, milk them themselves, and they would have very high quality meat and dairy. Yes, granted, they would also have the animal's blood, which I'm not necessarily recommending. But when you focus on the fact that their diet almost entirely consisted of meat and dairy, the Maasai tribe showed incredible attributes. So they were much taller than the average population. They had much higher muscle density, much better bone density. Physically, they were warriors. They were very strong. But also, they had higher IQs. They had 0 dental cavities. They had perfect dental arch formation. They had perfect facial symmetry. They had essentially no incidence of degenerative diseases like diabetes or high blood pressure or Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, or mental health conditions. They were peak condition. Now, you can't deny that nutrition had to have something to do with it. And what convinced me even further is that when one of these tribe members would move to another town where trade was available, so where they had westernized foods, so things like highly processed sugars and marmalades and processed food, cereals and such, when that individual who supposedly would have very good genetics, let's say, when they would go over to these towns which had access to the Western diet, their health would plummet and their children's health would plummet. So their kids would get cavities, they'd have health conditions, they'd have overcrowding of the teeth. And we all know how our teeth look as a direct representation of how healthy we are as the human race or as an individual. So you would see these people's health conditions or health just absolutely plummet.
And yeah, I'm glad that Dr. Roche has come through the training, the history of Weston A. Price, a dentist who went around the world and looked at the teeth of people untouched by Western foods. He found they had perfect teeth. He also chronicled as much as he could the diet of people, including the Maasai. And so nutrition and physical degeneration, it would be on my reading list if there was a course for people to learn about nutrition in general, because it gave a snapshot of what the human body and teeth specifically were like before the introduction of Western foods. It's good that Dr. Roche is using it, but now that doesn't prove that doing carnivore is best, does it?
And that really convinced me that, okay, there's something here. These people who are eating meat and dairy, they're the healthiest that they can possibly be. And when you see people, even that you might know, who've been eating lots of meat when they're younger and they weren't eating as much sugar or carbs or vegetables, they tend to be taller, healthier, smarter, and much better facial features.
Yeah, I don't know about that one, but again, he's just trying to bring it into his own life experience and figure this out. It's kind of neat to see this happening.
So that was the second thing that really convinced me. The third thing has to be biochemistry. Now, the amazing thing about biochemistry is that it's observable, it's fact, it's science. It can't be disputed. It doesn't matter if I say it or if someone else says it, it's fact, no matter what. And the fact is that biochemistry proves without a doubt that carnivore is the best way to proceed. Now,
well, just a comment about the biochemistry. I like the summary of, you eat carbs, you're a carb eater and a carb burner. You burn what you eat. If you don't eat carbs, you become a fat burner because that's what we've stored on our body. We store energy as fat. And the idea that burning fat is a cleaner fuel is maybe overworking the biochemistry in terms of what does it mean to the whole organism. But the general principle, I think, is sound. Whether that biochemistry means that a human's going to live better as a carb eater or a fat eater or fat burner, well, you're not a carb eater and you become a fat burner. Nobody really knows that for sure, but this would be kind of the theoretical basis based on biochemistry for why burning fat is a cleaner and healthier way to run your system.
And as I said before, I didn't jump right into it. I slowly transitioned. But honestly, the differences I found were astounding. And I'm going to make another video where I go through every single benefit that I have found through turning carnivore. But just to summarize very quickly, better energy, better mental clarity, weight loss, muscle gain, performing better in the gym, better and clearer skin, better hair quality, and the knowledge that I am reducing my chances of getting degenerative diseases to almost zero. So the chances of me, touch wood, of getting things like cancer or degenerative diseases like diabetes, dementia, they are much, much lower because of the nutrition plan that I'm following.
Well, a young doctor is learning biochemistry and not being told that one way is necessarily better than another to eat, but reasoning out through biochemistry, through population studies, meaning looking back to the past, actually before there was a bunch of carb consumption, population studies called nutritional epidemiology that include lots of carb eating. It may not be the best way to look at population studies. The nutritional epidemiology can get us down some rabbit holes. And then just the anecdotal evidence is quite persuasive, at least for the short run. But one thing that's really nice to see and fascinating is that there isn't fear-mongering about what's going to happen years from now, because the biochemistry is sound. And I think that's a fundamental change that needs to happen in the education, to have us not worry about, well, what will happen, tomorrow if everything's better now and the biochemistry is working right. And of course, it would be really nice to have studies where we measure biochemistry and outcomes, meaning lab tests and outcomes like death and dying and disease in real people who are doing a carnivore or low carb keto diet. I'm hopeful those studies will be done. But in the meantime, you measure all of these things in yourself. I like watching someone come to grips, well, a doctor educated to come to grips with what he didn't know and trying to learn a new way of thinking about nutrition. If you like this, please like, subscribe. Give me some comments about the thought process of this doctor as he basically went from vegetarian to carnivore. If you like, please subscribe, ring the notification bell, and look for new content on Wednesdays and Fridays. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our YouTube membership for early access and exclusive live Q&As with me. Just click the join button below or support us with a PayPal in the description.